welcome to our community call on best practices, learnings, and what's new. I've just shared a poll with this group to capture some trends of where folks are seeing changes currently at the end of the summer here. I'm curious if we want to start talking about what we're seeing in these poll results. And if there are some that stick out to you, like the ones that stick out to me. For me, I'm seeing the note on partnerships. 9 out of 10 are in some new partnerships. The note on being understaffed, I think, is key. And half mentioned some new insights and innovations. So I'd be curious to hear about those as well.
I'll just mention a couple things. There's a program that is about 30 years old of spiritual direction and training that has been in the Orlando area, which is a good 2.5 hours, depending on the awful traffic going from Tampa there. But they're looking for a new partnership at this time. So we're still in conversation with them, but it would highlight the spiritual direction that we also always have available to people, but even more allow us to do more on-site training of spiritual directors and to host people in this 3-year program. So our new executive director is kind of digesting all this, but I think that could be an exciting partnership. We want to be part of the community of communities for this next event on September 24th, but the funds are such that we're trying a pre-registration to make sure we have enough to cover it. Some of you that know that's going to be a program on the seedling, a novel around the capacity for environmental and eco-spirituality. And because funds are short, that was the only way we saw around it. So those are just 2 examples that I think we're trying right now.
What was the name of the organization that you want to do the partnership with?
Well, I'm hesitant to say it because
okay, that's fine.
No, it's been around for over 30 years. And
great. Okay, I thought I had missed it. You're fine.
That's all right. I'm just sensitive that it's still in the talking stages. So
great. Other folks want to chime in with an innovation or an insight?
Well, I don't mind. So one thing that comes to mind is that for Southern Dharma, the kitchen operations in particular have always been kind of like, I don't know, a place of vulnerability, let's say, for the retreat center. Because when you lose key kitchen staff, it's like, at least in our position, they're very hard to replace. And especially when you're a remote rural center, as we are. So the way we're kind of shifting our operations now is that pretty much everybody who's hired into a full-time position at Southern Dharma is going to need to have some kitchen capacity. Or at least some willingness to learn and some basic confidence around kitchen operations, so that it doesn't become kind of this heroic effort by, say one person who's kind of dealing with all of that and then puts the center in this incredibly precarious position if they decide to transition or whatever. So that's one thing that we're doing. And actually, I think it's really nice because I think a lot of people do really love being involved in the kitchen, especially, I would say, at least at a Buddhist retreat center. I don't know what it's like for you all, but at a Buddhist retreat center, the kitchen position is really like an important spiritual role. And because we have retreatants actually work in the kitchen when they're on retreat, it invariably it becomes a pretty important part of their experience and their practice. So that's the other challenge, of course, is not just finding people with basic kitchen skills, is that they have to be, ready to serve as part of the spiritual leadership of the center. and practice in the retreat center environment, which is not separate from the environment that the retreatants and the teachers are practicing in. So it's exciting and interesting, but also, it's hard to find right fit there, right? So this kind of, we've all been kind of, especially during the pandemic, doing more in regards to cross-training our positions so that we don't have, as much vulnerability. But I think it's also like, it turns out it's a nice way to kind of balance out people's roles so that they get a chance to kind of experience, work in a different way on different days and for different periods of time. So that's what I'll share about that.
And I could just piggyback on that. We actually previously, as Cabrini Retreat Center, we had a really nice, we called it a meal ministry. And it really was a place that the staff gathered and served, because we don't really do, although now with the new ownership, they are doing their own programming, but it was really the place where we met people and interacted with them. And also, I know from a Buddhist, but also from Christian spirituality, that sense of gathering at table is really, really important. So right now we're in this whole rethinking too of food service, and with the new ownership, they really aren't, like, the whole issue of liability and insurance is not on their screen, but especially around food service, it kind of has to be. So it is a really interesting time in terms of what we found surprisingly. Well, two things. One is the cost of providing a meal has skyrocketed, and our clients are not always so understanding of that. They're paying 25 or 30% more in a restaurant, but they don't think we should increase our prices. So that's a big challenge. And then the staffing, rural or local, with the limited resources available, and then also a variable census where people aren't getting full-time positions. So it is an opportunity for us. We're really focusing on doing training within the Latino community. A lot of people that are not documented are not moving up in food service world because they're afraid to go and get the licensing. So we're going to start a Spanish language training for food service licensing, and not just limit that to our staff, but to anybody who would like to have that experience. One of our staff is going to take the leadership on that. So she's going to develop her own skills and then share that with others. So it's an exciting time, but also very, very challenging in terms of being short-staffed. I think I agree. The more you can hire people that are willing and able to provide that service and be a part of that is really a big plus. But we're just finding our way, and the whole liability issue, who we can hire in terms of people going on payroll if they don't have a social security number. It's a really big issue, but for us, it's always been a center point of our service to the community has been really high quality food that accommodates special diets. We've served the Buddhist community, even the kosher community. Not that we can provide those meals, but resourcing that is just, it really is a critical piece for us. The other thing that we found that's been unexpected is people who are unwilling to accept the cost that we need to charge for meals. More and more, they're just happy to come and have the space, and figure out a way to provide their own food, which I had thought would really not work. But in an unexpected ways, I don't know that long term that's what we want to do, but people are willing to work with that at this time.
I'm just taking notes here. Welcome other folks to chime in.
Just for a second, we're trying to solve the issue too, because it's made a terrible expense by having to have a catering companies come in every time we do an event. When we did have a staff at one time, but one of the local chefs is thinking about making our kitchen a center for her own business, but then would supply us with meals as well. So it could be a solution that would help reduce the cost.
And we actually did initially, when the center was required, the new executive director brought in a chef with her own staff. But I think that would be a really great option. But one of the challenges we found was that she agreed to a certain per plate cost, which I agree, I thought was ridiculously low, and then really couldn't meet that. And so it was kind of an unfortunate situation. And then it turned out, again, because we're dealing with a lot of kind of being an old ministry and a new startup at the same time, she had signed a contract saying that she had all the necessary insurances for her people. And then it turned out that we found out in an unfortunate way that that was not the case. So, it's the stuff that I hate more than anything, but that whole compliance issue is a big challenge, especially in food service.
Hey, Ben and all, I'm Peter from Brighton Bush Hot Springs over here in Oregon. And I came in late because I had a medical appointment that I just had to do. And I would love to, could you frame the question that's being discussed here? I may have something I'd love to add to it. Thanks.
Yeah, I can do that real quick for you. I just, we did a poll after some introductions, and the poll may be on your screen or it may not. I'm not sure if you've come in afterward. But the poll started to reveal some trends in terms of what people are facing right now, whether it be opportunities or innovations or specific challenges. And so then I was inviting folks to just speak to what those might be at their center. Some of the trend to kind of highline things that I was noticing was that most people said they're in some new partnerships. Quite a few people are understaffed. Most people are back to their pre-pandemic occupancy levels. And then some interest in talking about fundraising and partnerships, insight and innovations. So those are just kind of some general frames of where conversation has been going since then. Folks are talking about partnerships, a lot of talk about kitchen and staffing, and just kind of feeling into what folks have tried that's been innovative and has worked.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Well, I'll just speak a little tiny bit about Brighton Bush. Because pandemic closed us down. That was not pleasant for the last 2.5 years, followed by this massive forest fire that burnt half of our buildings down and a lot of our woods and a lot of our infrastructure. We're off the grid. We're in the wilderness. So we make our own electricity and heat and domestic water and septic. We have to do all of that as if we were a municipality, in addition to serving guests. So it's been like one thing after another for the last 2.5 years. We're nowhere near up to our pre-pandemic numbers. Pre-pandemic, last year we were open fully, 2019, we had about 37,000 guests a year. We're maybe at a quarter of that number or less. And we had a staff of about 100, and we're more like 45, 47 people. So we're at about half strength and building our way out of all of that, stuff. And there's been some discussion about kitchens, commercial kitchens and all that. Because we're in the wilderness, we have all of our people who work there, live there. We're a residential place for both our staff and our guests. And we're working on co-op. We've got a staff of about 12 people working in the kitchen full time. And I was just having a conversation with the Marion County Health Department, which is a division of the Oregon State Health Department, saying, hey, it's about time for you guys to start to begin to do these. They do about 2 surprise inspections a year. And you're right, some of the voices, the requirements for commercial kitchens are just, they're major, and you have to do it. Cleanliness and all these other things just have to be maintained. So that's been a real issue in building up and in recreating our staffing, as well as our service to guests. But we're just engaged in that process now, and from my perspective as business director, I maintain relationships with people in compliance, in the compliance game of the bureaucracies, whether it's the Department of Fish and Wildlife or Marion County Health Department, or all of those things. So I relate to those people as free consultants, and I tell them that, and then we comply. And they like being told that they're being related to as free consultants instead of being a big hassle on the opposite side of some controversial relationship. We don't want to have controversial relationships with those folks. So, and I found them to be extraordinarily helpful in working with compliance people from the various departments, getting through all of this that we've been through. And then the last thing, it's been discussed about, the cost of goods sold have dramatically increased, and we just tell the truth to the people who are our guests, that if cost of goods sold have increased, and then we need to pass that on to our guests, and we sort of preload that conversation in a friendly way, saying, we're surviving here, and we're working for you to be able to come to this beautiful place and have these incredible experiences, and of course, but we have to work with the economics that are everybody has to work with those economic structures. And so we preload that conversation with emails. As people pre-register, we let them know what's going on here and where we're at. And I found that when we tell people in advance that we're in service and we're just telling the truth about the economics, people change their whole attitude and are more than willing to engage, because they want to support us, and support the good work that we're doing, the good work that all of our retreat centers are doing. So I bring them in as if they were members of the co-op. Hey, you are our extended community. And so anyway, those are a few thoughts, and I'll check with that. It's an interesting conversation.
Ben, I've lost my copy of the survey. Is it still available? If you wanted to talk about other things on it, or?
Let me stop sharing it and then reshare it and see if I can pull it back up.
I might have it hidden somewhere here. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I have a question for people. We're talking about instituting a new benefit for Southern Dharma employees. They've always had access to our retreats, and we've granted them the opportunity to take part in one full retreat per year as a participant. But we're talking about shifting to offering them essentially retreat vouchers, so that they could then, if they chose to, offer those vouchers to other people in their life who might like to take advantage of the programs. I'm just wondering if any of you have programs where you offer your employees vouchers for taking advantage of your own services or programs. None of you do that? You're not given retreat time? Yeah.
We contract with program partners most of the time for our programs, so we can't per se offer space to our employees. However, We started during COVID, we started an R&R, so like a retreat for folks in the community. They come, there's no program, but the meals, they come pay, they stay, their meals, it's just a time on the land. And our employees are welcome to come to those if we have space. We just pay, I think, maybe half for meals because we contract with our chef. So that we charge people for meals when they come to a program, but that money goes, sort of passes through us to the chef. And then she contracts with us to use the kitchen.
So there's no cost to staff for the accommodations, they just pay for meals?
Yep, okay. It's a discount on the meals. And we do, I will say, we do have some programs, like we've had a Powers of Leadership program that's more in partnership with us, that when that's happened, it's been beneficial to us to have an employee a year go through that. It's a 4-session program during the year. And so then the employee has a better idea of the programs that happen here. They meet people, they connect.
We don't do it now with the new owners, but what we did was, because we are mostly a hosting facility, we encouraged everybody to make a retreat, and it didn't have to be at our place. And that really, about maybe 50% of people would take advantage of that. And it built bridges with other places. And it gave them a sense of what a retreat experience might be like that would be appropriate for them. We had one gentleman who he really just needed a men's retreat for African-American men, and it was something we didn't offer. And that was just a wonderful experience for him in terms of insights into the work he did. So I think it's a great idea. If it's great if you can afford it, but we were doing that in the past.
We here at Lindenwood actually have a staff of 7, which I encourage them all to go on retreats. Plus we do 2 retreats where we pick other retreat centers and go see them and also do our retreat for the day. So we have a tendency to go out and check other retreat centers out. But we're actually one of 5 other ministries here. We have a skilled care facility. We have an independent living facility. We have the Sisters. We have a Moon Tree Studios. We have the college and so we actually offer a gift of the Spirit, so they can apply for financial aid and we'll get it pretty much if they're on the grounds and that. So we encourage many people on our grounds to take advantage of a retreat. And we offer, because we have sponsored retreats, we offer somewhere between 24 to 30 different retreat options during the year that they could choose from. So there's not just one kind of retreat that they can go on to, but there's quite a few. And like Woodby, we have that same day of rest and healing is what we call it. It's just a day away, and we have resources for people and just a chance to come and just enjoy nature and get away.
Well, what is your demographic range? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
For what?
Like,
everybody or of my staff, or what were you talking about? Or my age, or?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. I think I know you had youth there earlier when we were talking, but I just wondered, is it mostly a whole age range that comes?
We have the whole age range. We've gone actually all the way down to grade school kids, to high school groups, to college groups, to many older groups, and then we have all different kinds. I mean, we have Catholic groups, we've had Hindu groups, we've had yoga groups, we've had quilters, we've had different churches that do their trainings here. So we have a wide range of people that use our facility also, besides having the full range of dynamics. When you have a farm also, that's what brings in some of the grade school kids. They'll go see the cows and the sheep and that kind of stuff. And so it's a nice pull-in for them to do a day here.
Thank you, Paul. I just wanted to clarify.
Is that your new director there?
Yes, I finally
joined us
here. Yes, I'm sorry, I had a prior commitment. with a possible Zoom presenter. So here I am, and
Right.
I have to adjust the camera, obviously.
Paul, Ben, can you show the survey to Brian too? Will he be able to see it? Oh, mine disappeared. Oh, here it is.
There it is.
We did this at the beginning, Brian.
Yes, yes, I understand. I can see that our answers would have been similar to what's here.
Okay, that's good. For some, it's not. For some people are a little off this, but yeah.
We're back to not pre-pandemic, but approaching that as far as the last 2 months anyway. We'll see what happens. Okay.
Ben, I've lost track of where we are. Anybody else?
I'm wondering if there are other pieces of the poll that we would like to move into discussing. Either, there are several different aspects that we could jump into here. I think the staffing and organizational culture and being understaffed, how those two go together. Some people are in a leadership transition. I wonder if that plays into some of the staffing and organizational culture concerns. If there's something there. And then I heard a couple of people talking about partnerships, including that really interesting idea of working with a caterer to be an on-site cook and then also work with outside groups. But I'm wondering if there are other partnership ideas or new partnerships that folks might want to share just to spark ideas around the group.
As the latecomer, I don't want to steal the stage here, but we're in a leadership transition. Yours truly is the new guy. And the staffing, as we acknowledged this morning at a meeting, is at the lowest number it's been in a long, long time, still coming out of COVID. We're not at a place that we can add staff, but we are getting some coaching for a development and robust fundraising plan that's coming to us free of charge due to a grant that I think will lead us to a place where hopefully we can start to recoup some of the roles of previous better staffing kinds of situations. And I heard the caterer thing. Yes, we're hoping to have that work for us. It worked for me when I was a school principal. The caterers ran the lunch program. They also did their catering business out of the back door of the facility. And it was wonderful for them because we didn't have to charge them facility overhead costs. They gave us meals at a very reasonable rate. And then they did their regular catering business and they were able to do some pretty good pricing even for their other clients. So that may be the best use of our kitchen right now. So hoping it's going to work.
We haven't, we're trying something new that we've never done before here at the Whitby Institute. We have a residential program. We're partnering with the group is called Lolly Innovative Living and Learning Institute out of Commonweal. And it's going to be 4 months residential programs. We've never done that before. At young people ages 21 to 29, Lolly went around the country and chose 2 different retreat centers, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, to pilot this program. They're hoping to bring it in, actually take it all over the United States eventually. And so we're the first pilot program. And so I'm the liaison for Lolly. So we have a Whitby Institute staff member liaising with Lolly, with the staff members there, and just helping to get the word out, keeping my team informed, engaging people on my team as we need it, connecting them with talking about fundraising together. So more partnering than we do with a lot of our programs. And that will be in January through April which is those are our slow months right here on Whidbey. And so it's really beneficial to us to have a group solidly here. The power goes out and the road gets blocked and all that. We have people here who are committed to those 4 months.
Have any other folks on this call worked at all with residential programs more during the pandemic? I know in early 2020, we talked about that quite a bit more because it was a way to get people into a COVID-safe bubble for a longer period of time. But I'm wondering if that actually took off at any of the centers that are here. Some, okay, and some no. Yeah, I think the Alali program, as we were doing some conversations with centers about their capacity to do a program that long term, they said that just butts up against so many recurring annual cycle kind of programming that we're used to. So that wasn't possible for a lot of centers, and others just didn't have enough space for that many people to be on site for that long.
Wondering if anyone has any experience with elder hostel programs. I know they usually work with colleges, universities, and folks travel to those locations with lectures and field trips, to either historic sites or archaeological, sites or whatever. Just wondering if any of the retreat centers have ever, anyone here represented has. Looks like Peter has.
Yeah, I have. And it was hugely successful, and it went on for some years. It was interrupted by COVID. We haven't reset that thing up. But the elder hostel folks here on the West Coast, once we got that going on an annual basis, they would bring a group, and those people were hugely curious, interested in the structure of how we're organized as a co-op, in the history of the place, and in talking about historical issues, anything that we presented, they were super curious about. Of course, there are hot springs here, so they're interested in the geographic or the geological features here. But if you contact them and you find somebody in Elder Hostel who wants to partner with you, you're going to find they're fabulous, and and you can figure out the financial deal, and those folks are perfectly happy to pay whatever that cost is. You just work it out in advance. So you're onto something there. Thanks for reminding me. I want to get that going now in this post-COVID or nearly post-COVID world. Thanks.
Since you're not next door, we're not in competition here. And I'm glad to hear that. But the Tampa Bay area, especially for, we have a Catholic university nearby. They have professors on staff who live right here in our neighborhood who might be able to do some of the early history. The first Catholic Mass was celebrated in the Diocese of St. Petersburg, for example, and through the state. And there are some Florida martyrs that have been forwarded for canonization, etc. So, but that wouldn't be the only area that I'd be interested in, because we have the University of South Florida, we have Stetson Law, we have other partners that I think could provide a rich program for seniors who want to come, spend several days, have some lectures, have the opportunity to visit sites and or as well as some recreation, because who doesn't want some of that? Thank you. Thanks for that endorsement.
Ben, if I can step in here for a quick second. One of the questions on that poll is if they're back to kind of pre-pandemic numbers. Now, I think that there is a lot of retreat centers who do and focused mostly on retreats, which are probably the ones that got probably hit and impacted the most during COVID. But there are other centers, spirituality centers, who their main focus, who don't have retreat spaces available, whose main focus is programming. Could I ask for a quick, maybe raise of hand of those retreat centers here today who are involved in programming and if those numbers have picked up pre-pandemic? Okay. Can I ask a second question? I'm curious to know, of these people who are doing retreat centers that are doing programming, how many of them are fully back to on-person? Which ones are online? And if there's hybrid components to your programming?
We do have a room in Zoom every other month of a recovery retreat, a mini retreat that includes people having dinner first, and then the Zoom people come in at about 6:30. So that's one we've been very successful because the sister who's doing it is well known around the world, actually. And so that's been very successful. And I think we tried one for an Advent retreat last year, where we had a speaker, but then the Zoom. And I just understand from August, we had 200 people signing up for Zoom programming. So it'll always be a hybrid, I think, Brian, that we'll continue to offer. But we still aren't up to the kind of retreats we used to offer. We've had a couple of weekend directed retreats that were full almost immediately, but we're still not offering the, we really have to depend now on our hosted groups for a while, I would say. I can say that as a board member.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yolanda, I should have raised my hand for programming at the Whitby Institute, but we don't have an online component. We're purely in person, and we're not up to pre-pandemic level. People have definitely been coming back. We've had good groups this year, and we've had some cancellations more than we've had in the past, I think, because of, you know, COVID rises and falls, and numbers aren't what they were yet.
Thank you, Martha.
Marta, what you were just bringing up about cancellations and that kind of increase in cancellations, I got an email from Eve at Pearlstone, and she named a couple other trends sort of similar to that. One was about group sizes, that the actual size of the group coming to the retreat has shrunk for their center. Consistently, there's a pattern of that. She also found that the booking cycle had shrunk, so that where some folks were planning 12 to 18 months out, now they're 3 to 6 months, and much more contracts are coming in even within 30 days. So I wonder if that speaks to folks on this call too. Are others seeing those kinds of patterns where it's like fewer people closer to the date, basically more flexible, it sounds like. She says we attribute this to people being wary about variants in the future that could interrupt the ability to execute a retreat.
We had a group that they come regularly. They came this year, but when they came, they actually had about a third of the people that they had said they were going to have. So we find we need to rework some of our policy so that we, you know, it could work for them, but it could also work for us in case of these extremely last minute cancellations.
I was interested in COVID safety being 0. I guess I'd be interested. I think a lot of places, including ours, is letting people make their own decision about masking and how they want to attend in person, but I don't know if that's true in other places as well.
Yeah, I wonder, does the 0 mean that we have policies in place and they're working well enough, or that we're kind of stepping back and letting groups manage their own policies? I'm wondering if there's a way that that's leaning for this.
So we don't host groups at all. We only do our own programming. And so we have, I guess, complete control over that issue. One thing that I am looking to work on with the board at the October meeting is is reconsidering our policy of requiring both primary series vaccination and booster of on-site employees who have significant amounts of contact with retreatants. My sense is that it's time for us to transition. I don't know what other people are thinking at this point. We don't require the booster of people who come on site, but we do require primary series vaccination of anybody who comes on site, teachers and participants. And we used to require that staff also stay masked in any spaces when they were not at the retreat center if the vaccination status of the individuals they were sharing space with was unknown. But we just don't, we don't actively enforce that anymore because there's been, as I'm sure you've all noticed, a big cultural shift away from that kind of a stringent approach. So I don't know if any of you actually had policies around vaccination status of employees or boosters, but I'd be curious as to whether you have plans to adjust any of those later this year.
I would say that that's highly influenced by the state and the counties around you. We're in Florida. And so our governor, I don't want to get into the politics, but he's running on, at least we were free here in Florida. And so it's a very difficult situation when the culture around us is very lax and now has become, I would say, not only lax, but complacent about it. And so more often than not, if we even suggested it at this point, we'd have a problem. And the governor has sued school systems, churches that in any way barred access to people in the height of COVID. And so that becomes a particular concern for us. And so I'm not saying it's the right thing or the wrong thing, whatever, but I know that that has a great factor. I speak to relatives who are in the Northeast and they have a whole different perspective on this. And there is a whole different level of public commitment to masking, vaccination, all of those things. This is Florida, at least we're free, is the big saying at the moment.
Yeah, and I just heard about a Florida retreat center my friends were at where 2 people ended up with COVID out of 35 people for a weekend. So that's the trouble, is you expose other people, and it's a real dilemma, isn't it? And I used to teach management, and I always said, problems you can solve, dilemmas you can only manage. And I think that's what COVID become for most of us.
Is anybody relaxing their vaccination requirements for staff or retreatants?
Good.
Mindy, I don't know if you wanted to speak on this, but at the Dominican Center, because we are under the umbrella of Dominican Sisters Grand Rapids, we follow that protocol, whatever that may be. And we currently are required to get vaccinated. However, we're in a very particular situation because, well, as employees, we do fulfill those requirements. We are now not in the same building as the sisters are because we're at a different location, which is a college campus. So then as far as the people who are welcome into our space, then we follow the protocols that the college has. And currently the college isn't requiring masks, so therefore we can't enforce them. It can get tricky, but we allow people, if they feel comfortable wearing a mask, we are good with that. If they choose not to, again, we can't mandate it either. So that's where our Dominican Center is with this.
We've required participants to be vaccinated, but we don't check. We're not asking for their vaccination card. We don't require boosters, and we do COVID testing on site as soon as they get here, which, as we all know, is not always foolproof at all. But I think it gives people a sense of, I think it makes them feel better when they come on site and they take a test, and they've taken a test with their group, and then the groups decide amongst themselves whether they're masking or unmasking during their retreat.
Are you asking about COVID protocol right now? Sorry, I had a phone call I had to take.
Yeah, Sonia is curious if centers are dropping some of their previous requirements, if there's a shift towards laxness.
We have gone completely away. No masks required, no social distancing required, no requiring that they have to have a vaccine. But what's interesting is we opened up June of 2020 right away, and went from June of 2020 to June of 2022, having groups here with masks and social distancing. We didn't have a single case. Since then, we've had cases, but they've all been mild. And so it's almost like the flu. And I'm not going to run around asking people if they have the flu, because I really don't want to know that either. So, but they've been pretty honest about, yeah, somebody was there and they ended up going home and they had COVID. So, so it's here, but I think it's going to be here to stay for a very long time. So.
For the Racial Healing Initiative, because we're bringing that program with our team to all these various sites around the United States, all of which are different, all of which have different cultural and local expectations. We've realized that we needed to have our own policy to bring in, because there's such a variance of policies on site. So we are doing something very similar to what Marta was describing at Whidbey, with testing upon arrival, and then the group decides as a group what they want to do about masking after that. Which still isn't quite up to the satisfaction of some of our more vulnerable participants, and is a lot of work for centers that haven't been enforcing that strictly, and they have to make phone calls to all these retreat participants. So we're trying to strike that balance at this point from a national perspective. I think for centers who work with specific communities in specific locations, and there's a mutual cultural understanding of how we're managing this, it might be simpler. Conversations like this are really helpful to see just the range of where folks still are. For me, yeah.
I'm curious if there are other centers that do the on-site testing, or groups that.
We do on-site testing. We actually also require results from a test 3 days before the people arrive. So they have to present test results from 3 days before. They do an on-site test when they arrive. And then if they're symptomatic during their stay, we test them then as well.
Thanks. And I should say that we didn't require vaccination fully. It was vaccination or a PCR test.
Well, jumping into this this particular part of the conversation, we have a number of groups that come and use the Brighton Bush facility, and we let them choose how they want to do this with respect to their group. And different groups have different criteria and different ways of dealing. So some are more careful and conservative around these things, and others are saying it's endemic now, and we are going to work with that presumption that you know, and like Paul from Lindenwood said, we've had a number of cases, but these are individual cases that we'll hear about. There's been no super spreader event or anything even close to that from the events, and from the people who come into Brighton Bush, and we ask about that even post event. We'll send out and say, hey, let us know if. So My own perspective is that this thing is going endemic with the population, and people will be talking about it in 100 years, just like we talk about the Spanish flu 100 years on from its onset in 1918, 1919. And so far, so good, so far, so good. I think people are being very careful, actually. The people who come to Breitenbush, to our center, are on the whole very careful. And maybe we're lucky, or maybe that's just the way it's moving. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
I mean, do you have barriers, policies in place to create a barrier between your on-site residential folks and these random groups pulling in from outside?
Good question. We've certainly debated, and our debates have ranged and at times raged over the last 2.5 years for our on-site folks, because we live and work here. So, we have our relationships are as neighbors, as co-workers, and as co-owners of the business of this. And so, we're engaged with each other, the people who work and live at Breitenbush. But at this point, we say, people, take the precautions you wish to take. Some people wear masks, most don't. And of course, a lot of things happen outside. It's been summer. And we're not putting, in terms of the meeting rooms, we're not filling meeting rooms the way that happened prior to the pandemic, with 100 people in a 1,000 square foot room or something. It's more like maybe 35 people in a 1,000 square foot room at the max. People are just being careful, and this is, who knows where this is all going to end up, but people are sensing their way into it. And most of the rules are being dispensed with, and just saying, hey, we're all adults. We're taking care of our own individual health. And we've never experienced a super spreader event, anything like it. And we're paying attention. So that's where we're at now.
I do want to say that this past weekend, we had an event with people from quite literally all over the world. And my concern with that one was people flying in, maybe they weren't exposed where they were, but airports and airplanes and everything else. And I don't know what to do with that. They were a hosted group. We just hosted them. They did all of their programming. We did let them make the determination, again, remembering the context of Florida. But whoever mentioned, we probably should contact, and I again, kind of new here, but didn't realize maybe we should be contacting their leadership so that they at least let us know if anyone reports, because I know that this summer I was at the University of Notre Dame for a program, and 2 days later, we started getting emails from the university telling us that people had been exposed. And that's when I started to have the aha experience that what I had wasn't a head cold, and the rest is history, even though vaccinated, etc. So, but yeah, it's a dilemma. Maureen is right.
We have about 10 minutes left. I'm wondering if there's another aspect of that poll that's striking to folks, or if there are other things that people have been kind of holding on to for commenting.
Well, Ben, it wasn't your poll questions there, but one of the things you had asked in the invite was, what are some of the things you learned from going through the pandemic and that? And so I've had that ready to share. So I thought I'd just throw that in quickly. And I think the one of the biggest things that I shared, I know there's a number of people are new directors on here. And it's been very interesting being a director. I came on at the beginning of the pandemic and have been a director for most of the pandemic until June was the first time not. But it's it's kind of what a lot of FACE are about is that you go through a time and you'll come back and things will be, get back to somewhat of a normal. And that's one of the things I realized through it is, there were some weak times during some struggles during the pandemic and things you had to adapt to and move. But in looking at things now, and even though half the year was still a pandemic, we're coming back to kind of a renewal of life, a renewal of things coming back to the life. It's kind of like our seasons. We have to go through, well, some of the people down in Florida don't have to go through winter, but some of us up here have to go through winter and the coldness and the bitterness to come back around to a new spring and the summer and what it can be again. And so I think I learned to be patient with the seasons, that it will come around, it will come back, that it isn't, we have to come up with something brand new. But some of the stuff, and I was on one of your other committees, people are saying, well, things have changed, we all have to, and it's like, no, the old is okay too. It still works. That having a retreat center with people in it does still work also. You don't have to have everything online. And I think that's one of the special things is seeing people live and being with people is what retreats are about. As much as they did work online and they do work online, you still need that togetherness too. So that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Because we all work at retreat centers in this circle. So if they still work, that would be nice. I will just say that I think many of us had that sense when we were sitting as retreat center leaders at that retreat at Kirkridge in May, and this sense of, wow, being on a retreat is really special. Like to sit at a table with people, to break bread together, like that's just, wow. And I think sometimes you forget that when you're in the thick of problem solving. Yolanda, did I interrupt you? Did you have something coming up there?
No, I was actually very glad and very happy for Paul when he said you're almost back to pre-pandemic. And I know that you said that you've learned patience through it all, but aside from that, I'm curious to know what you've done that you feel has led to you coming back full circle. If you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Actually, I can, because I did think about this. One of the things that we did is we have a lot of hosted groups that had a long time commitment, and we made sure we treated them like family during this pandemic. So we checked in on them. How are you doing? Either rolling a deposit or refunding it. Just treating others with respect. And like I think I'm up now to, just in 2022, we had 20 groups that had not been here since before the pandemic that are back this year, and has made a huge difference is because we took care of them during the pandemic, they want to be back here. And so this is home to them. This is where they want to be. And unfortunately, and I don't think she's on anymore, but we're like less than 2 hours from Chicago. And we've watched so many in Chicago close up completely. I've gained probably a half a dozen to a dozen groups that used to meet over there that now come here, and that because they're gone. They're gone. And unfortunately, we've seen it all over the country that retreat centers that existed before no longer exist. And it's a shame. So did I answer your question, Wanda?
Yes. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks everyone for sharing so freely of your experience, current experience. And I think for those new folks who haven't been on community calls or haven't been an ED for a long time, this can be a helpful conversation. Encourage you guys to be able to connect offline as well. I wish that there were easier tools to do that, but if you can do some private messaging here or share your email with the group so that folks can keep bouncing ideas back and forth when we're not in a community call, I encourage that as much as possible. I wanted to offer just a couple announcements before we close. Our next community call is a racial healing workshop, which we haven't had a few over the summer. We're going to be inviting Dr. Leticia Nieto to speak on Beyond Inclusion, a developmental strategy to liberate everyone. Dr. Leticia is well known in her field, and I've actually helped host a panel that she spoke on, and I was struck by her musicality and poetry and vision. She really is an incredible thinker and speaker, so I'm looking forward to that workshop. You can always catch our upcoming events on our website, on our events page. The Zoom link is the same for each community call, so if you've made it to this meeting, you can make it to the upcoming meetings as well. We don't put the Zoom link on the calendar though, so it's not on the public facing part of the website, but all the other information is there. Any other questions that I can answer while we're here? Let me know. No. Brian, yes.
One last one. You had sent that racial diversity project information. I know I'm slaughtering the language of it.
Yes.
And I responded that I'm kind of too new to be instituting something that big. However, there's at the Catholic diocese level and at a Catholic parish in which boundaries the center exists, that has just begun a racial diversity and anti-racist program in their parish. Can I put them in touch with you to find out about this, to find out if this would serve them? Because I don't want it to be blocked by my lack of ability at the moment to wrap my arms around it. But I would like these folks. I am on that committee, but I don't run that committee. I'm just a member. It's nice. And so I just don't know what all the dimensions and the possibilities are. So if you don't mind, can I send them in your direction to get some information about this?
What I would say is that the scope of the initiative is geared toward retreat centers. So
Right.
Another center that could be affected, or if they wanted to host the programming.
That's what I was wondering. Right.
For the benefit of the retreat center, great.
Yep. Okay, good. See, that's the one I wanted to know exactly how that was. So thank you.
For
I'll be in
example,
touch.
yeah, for example, we're working with an Episcopal diocese in Maryland or in Delaware, where they own 2 retreat centers. And so we're working with them at those local sites.
Good. Okay. I just didn't want to be blocking the possibility for others, who have interest in doing good things.
Always good to have the conversation and see what's possible. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And same for others who are exploring how this might fit with their center. I'm also encouraging folks who are not able to be pilot sites to be involved in the workshops. And as more of our pilot sites continue, we'll be able to share the curriculum that we're developing that centers will be able to use across the country. So there's a lot of learning that's happening now that will allow this project to grow and scale out to affect and impact more centers. So I'm looking forward to that process over the next 2 years. Great. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for coming to this community call. See you in 2 weeks. Reach out if you have questions.
Thank you, Ben.
You
Thanks.
bet.
All.